Content warning. This series will discuss topics that may bring up painful experiences for you. Please take the time to surround yourself with good medicines. If need be, pause the playback and go for a walk, stretch, have a glass of water, and come back to the show when you feel comfortable. Welcome to the Métis Speaker Series. I'm your host, Darian Kovacs. On this podcast series, we will be exploring learning, healing, and rebuilding within the Métis community. Our goal is to create awareness of and generate discussion about Métis issues, as well as how to heal from and move forward in a healthy way. We hope to reduce Métis invisibility in BC through the personal stories from our Métis community members. This show is brought to you by the Métis Nation of British Columbia and Jelly Marketing.
I couldn't help myself. You gave me everything.
Welcome to another episode of the Métis Speaker Series. I'm thrilled to introduce you to Julie Nolin, who is a reporter and a content producer with Global BC. She previously spent more than 9 years as a multi-skilled journalist with CTV News in British Columbia, with a brief stint as a producer and anchor with CTV News in Edmonton. Julie also teaches journalism, media, television, and a lot more at the British Columbia Institute of Technology. She is proudly Métis and Cree and has 2 sons. Julie, thank you for being here.
Thanks so much for having me.
Okay, so favorite part of your job? I need to know, doing what you do.
I think it is hard to answer because there's so many favorite parts. But I think Linda Steele. I think you've talked with Linda Steele before. She's got this great view on having a house party and having really great parties when there's a bunch of reporters there. And I know that sounds maybe a bit daunting, but the great thing about journalists is that we are such conversationalists because we get to learn a lot about a lot of topics, and it has to be such a quick study sort of environment. And this week I got to do just a real range of stories. On Tuesday, I did stories on the issues with the 3 respiratory illnesses that are currently circulating in Canada and about to hit us hard here in British Columbia. And talking about the idea that maybe mask mandates are coming back, and thankfully, that's not happening. But there's that strong recommendation we need to take care of ourselves. So I really appreciated doing that story and getting comment from the government around what they were going to do the next day, which we were given the heads up that no, they weren't going to introduce a mask mandate. So I did that story on Tuesday, and then Wednesday I did this very sad story about this gentleman who was involved in a collision with a person in an alleged stolen vehicle. This poor man, 73 years old, and really struggling with the no fault insurance set up at ICBC. He's got 7 broken ribs and, on top of cancer treatments and heart conditions. And oh my goodness, it was just such a sad story. And then yesterday morning, I learned, oh, you're going to go to Hyde Creek Hatchery and you're going to learn about salmon and the spawning issues and the drought that we're experiencing. And so yes, I used to fish all the time as coming from a very traditional Indigenous family that enjoyed fishing and hunting. But I'm from the prairie, so I had to learn a lot about salmon yesterday. so, so it's you have to be open to the ambiguity of the job and really being curious and trying to learn what you can around each of these issues. And so I'm naturally that, so I enjoy that. My partner is also in the media, And he and I were talking about this just a few weeks ago and how lucky we are that we've had such rich learning experiences with every story that we do. I mean, he's been able to fly in the Goodyear blimp, and like how many people could say, "Oh yeah, I've ridden in the blimp," and I've been up in fighter jets as a reporter and experienced something like that. Used to fly in the helicopter with Chopper 9 at CTV. Like, and it like the stuff we have been able to do. For me personally, I've got to meet famous people, but mostly it's just learning to connect with real people and real stories, and trying to honor them properly through strong storytelling.
Amazing. You mentioned growing up and having a strong Indigenous connection there. Tell us about that and kind of your connection to your Métis as well.
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like when you come from that mix of a heritage where I felt a strong connection to the Métis side, but also to the Cree, growing up, and it's do I feel like there's more of a pull to one side or the other? And the answer is no. I feel pretty much in the middle with that. Having, like, for example, I was sharing this story not long ago about my grandmother, um, had made me moccasins when I was 5, and I remember being upset because my feet weren't big enough, to fit them, and I remember waiting to fit into those moccasins and how happy I was once I got to wear them and thinking how beautiful they were, and she passed, not long after, and so I didn't get another pair from her, and, it's things like that, and just also the daily practice of, smudging and just, like, feeling, that I have that opportunity to, cleanse my soul, my energy, for a lot of the work that I do, which can be hard, in that, we can deal with some pretty sad stories, um, all the time. And so and I don't know if you're like this too. As you get older, I feel a lot more emotional. Like, I was with this gentleman, like I said, on Wednesday, and, he started to cry because he said, "This has been a really bad year." And he started to cry. And I could feel like that power of him opening up to me and sharing his story with me. And I was very much like ready to cry. And I feel like I'm really breaking down as years go on, but I don't think that's a bad thing, right? Like, you want to be real. And so, I don't want to cleanse myself from that kind of stuff, because that's the good stuff that makes us good people, right? But it's some of the really sad, tragic stuff. And, my partner and I were talking about this week. When you deal with, say, court stories where there's testimony where it's really graphic, and, we do filter that some of that information, either because there's publication bans or other things that are going on. And I've had to deal with some pretty sad court stuff as well, in recent weeks. So you need that ability to kind of, whew, I gotta, I gotta get that out of my world a little bit, and I gotta get back to my family and the people that are important here. So yes, that's where I notice that I do bring that in, and as well, like I mentioned, the storytelling. I feel like when you have that opportunity to really appreciate the importance of solid storytelling, it's something that we grow up in our, I think, in the culture, but it's that again, you're now putting it into practice. And when I would mentor young Indigenous journalists, and I've done this for a long time, where you're really being able to, I hope, pass along some wisdom around how to do that well and to capture not just the information and the facts, but also the emotion and all the power, that can communicate, effectively, and I think that, like, nobody does that better than Indigenous peoples, in my view.
So, Julie, would you say those that are listening that are Métis right now and thinking about a career in journalism or about shifting careers or joining this amazing industry, that they as a Métis person would have an advantage?
I think so, and the the reason I say that is that, when I worked for, the Sharing Circle on APTN, starting in 1998, and I was with the show for several years, and it was such a great opportunity. I still I still treasure that time, on the show because we had elders that who would actually advise us, while we were producing our episodes, and that was so valuable and wonderful, to me. But then also, just to be able to connect with all of the different communities, the First Nations outside of Calgary and Edmonton, and into Saskatchewan as well, and really being able to revisit that later, um, was wonderful for me personally, but it was sort of cutting edge at the time because there wasn't that much of a I don't think, an opportunity for Indigenous journalists, and this is where, I'm trying to come back to my point, is that we can see now there's a shift happening in a very positive way, right now where, for example, the new head of, some of these Indigenous initiatives with, Chorus, Global News nationally, Melissa Ridgen from APTN, we've been talking actually this last few weeks, and, she's so awesome, and I'm so excited that she's where she's at in the network to really create some more positive change, but she was reaching out, she said, "Is there anyone who you know that could fill this, online role to cover Western Canada?" And it's like, wow, there's just this tiny handful right now of journalists that have the skill set to be able to do those jobs. So, I was part of an Indigenous, initiative at BCIT for the last couple of years with, Alan Waterman from formerly of CBC, and we really want to support more of these young journalists to come and, I know it's a scary thing leaving sometimes, their small, towns or First Nations to come to us. So they've left a wonderful support network. We want to support them so that they are going to school and that they're feeling like it's it's a positive experience for them. And what we are hearing is that for a lot of students, I mean, it's both non-Indigenous and Indigenous, but that adjustment to that kind of workload, and, I think just not having as much understanding and appreciation for, the ability to, connect through heritage and through storytelling, and that's something we've been really trying to do more of. And so to shortly answer, try and give a short answer to what you're asking, I think we're just coming into a great moment in history where we can start to really harness, our people and our stories. And 20 something years ago, when I started on that show, it really wasn't there. And there was a tremendous amount of I don't like using the word racism in this case, but it was. I had a colleague say to me, "Well, why would we care about First Nations storytelling? Why does that matter?" Well, it matters. And here's why, and here are these great stories. And, I think it's coming, it's just starting, but this is an exciting time to get going if you're a young journalist.
Amazing. And for you growing up, knowing that you were Métis, knowing you had this part of your life, what was that like? Or how did you see it played out in your life? And maybe even today, how do you see it played out in your life?
Um, I it was kind of a weird upbringing because we had, um like my sister and I'm the eldest, and we had this, Indigenous side of our family and the non-Indigenous side, and the non-Indigenous side was not very tolerant, and not really very understanding. I think that some were, and I don't like to say that entire one side was that way, but there was just not enough, I think, of that side holding up, where my sister and I were from. So that was a bit unusual, I think, because you really want to feel like you have connection to both sides, and I felt like because the Indigenous side of my family was far more accepting of who we were, I felt like there was that just makes that connection easier. So, I think as time went on and I got to do, the show for APTN, I think that really, harnessed a lot more for me about the importance of our my heritage and where I wanted to sort of make a difference and in education and all these things coming together the way they did was chaotic in some ways, but it was beautiful. And to be able to go to Royal Roads and take, the professional communication masters, and I did a whole area of specialization in intercultural and international communication. So I did a lot of studies on the coastal First Nations, which was so awesome to be able to learn. Which I had such a solid, I think, footing in Métis, Cree, Blackfoot, but I didn't have enough out here. And I mean, I've been out here since 2005, so it was nice to go to school in 2008 and really be able to, okay, I get this now. These are the similarities. These are the differences, and so I have that from that academic perspective, and so it really helped once I got into teaching intercultural communication at BCIT for several years and developed lots of curriculum around that. So it's been a I mean, it's probably boring to hear me say those things, but it was just a lot of, it's just I'm like I say, it's so naturally curious, so much about learning, and it's just been it's just been a great journey for me. So it's always a
Amazing.
part of everything that I do.
What about teaching?
So I love teaching. I am taking a break. Couldn't do what I'm doing at Global if I was trying to do that as well. So I had to step aside, and it was really a challenge to like to say to the program head at the journalism program, at the beginning of August, guess what? I'm going to go to Global. And I'm really sorry. I'm gonna put this aside for a bit. They've actually been so fantastically supportive in wanting me to do this again, because it does make us better teachers when when we have that real world experience to apply in the classroom, and something recent to be able to say, oh, I here's what I did for this story, or this was the challenge I had and this is how I navigated it. Because the job is not an easy one. It can be a lot of blocks in the day, and you're still up against a hard deadline. And so uh, we try to teach students, okay, this is how it goes. This is the drill. And it was interesting yesterday. I was, like I say, at the Hyde Creek hatchery, an education center, and this gentleman came up to me and he goes, "So when is this story on?" I said, "Tonight." And he goes, "No, no, no, no. Sorry, when's this story on?" I said, "I said, oh, it's on tonight." And he goes, "No, no, no. I don't think you understand me. I'm saying when's the story on?" Like he asked me 3 times, and I said, "No, it's on tonight." And you could
Amazing.
tell he was like, "What do you mean it's on tonight?" And I said, "Well, we're going to be doing this story. Like we're filming this morning, and I'm going to be producing and writing the story and voicing the story, putting this all together for the for the evening shows. It'll be on at 5 and at 6 o'clock." And like, I think he just couldn't wrap his brain around how quickly we have to put that material, on the air. So yeah, it's it's trying to teach that sort of stuff, like how to be efficient. Um, but I do enjoy teaching. I'm glad I'm taking a break. I miss my
Yes.
students. I've been hearing a lot from my group that I had last year, and they've been coming in for internships, and I usually get 1 or 2 of them coming over, giving me a big hug, "We miss you." So so I so I really miss them as well, but I'm glad to take a little bit of a break because it was very hard through the pandemic. I'm not going to mince words. It was a challenge.
Julie, you mentioned something about discovering kind of through the master's program, kind of the differences in groups and people groups and cultures and nations. Um, do you feel like in the position that you're in now that kind of people you work with and peers and maybe call it this is a broad one, the news industry in general knows the difference between Inuit, First Nations, and Métis?
Nope.
And if not, what could be done, or what are you trying to do, or what, I don't know, is there anything that could be done about that?
Yes, I mean, this is something that I like I was so glad that Global really made such a point to hire me, based on my heritage and my experience, and that was actually in the posting, that I was able to apply for and get, this position, and the 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 posting actually said experience with truth and reconciliation, and understanding, more, um, more about these cultures, across the country. So that was pretty neat. But then you're there, and now what? And I have been able to, I think, make a tiny difference. There's just so much more that we need to do, but I think that difference has been around teaching some of my colleagues, here's how we write this. I'm certainly no expert. I'm really not an expert here. But I'm happy to try to answer some of the questions. I can't speak for everyone. I can't speak for all Indigenous cultures, but here's what wording I would use, or here's how I would present that information. And we even had a situation recently where, we I was talking with Nitu Garcha from Global National, who's just made tremendous inroads with different Indigenous communities across the country, but especially here in British Columbia. And, we were discussing, for example, she asked me, what should I do when I go to this story in Bella Bella, regarding the poor grandfather. Yeah, you remember this story? That, grandfather and granddaughter trying to open up a bank account in Vancouver and they end up being handcuffed, treated horribly. And there was this ceremony, a few weeks ago in Bella Bella, and she said, "What do you think do I need to, consider this or that or whatever?" And I said, "Again, I'm no expert, but here's what I would do. This would be my instinct to do this or bring these gifts or, you know, uh, those sorts of things." So, it's just learning to, I think, ask questions and to be respectful in that journey. And, you're not gonna know everything, but at least at least I'm there now that I can help, you know?
There's groups celebrating Métis Week just recently, and Louis Riel Day. Is that talked about ever? What's the stuff that makes the news? What is making the news these days that you're seeing that would reflect upon the Métis population in your news outlet?
Hmm. Um, I actually think that's a real problem because there's not enough. We've got a lot of discussion around other backgrounds, other nations, but not enough, I think, is being done to, really convey. the stories from the Métis Nation in particular, and you know, what, programs, um, culture, what sort of things are really happening. There's not enough of that being distributed, in my opinion. I mean, certainly, I think people don't have enough knowledge in general of what being Métis is. And I had this conversation a few weeks ago where this colleague said to me, Métis Cree, isn't that the same thing? No, that's not the same thing. Um, and here's how it's not the same thing. And I didn't scoff at that question. I just said, here's the Coles notes on some of the differences. And yeah, I mean, every time there's Louis Riel Day, sure, there's opportunity to be talking more about that sort of thing. Just like when we have, like, for example, Remembrance Day here was just last week. And when we can talk about, here's another segment of our population, our First Nations veterans, and why it's a different experience for them. Like, I was really happy that that story was done, and Krista Dow did the story for us at Global. She did a very good job. Unfortunately, I wasn't working that day, so I couldn't be a part of it as much as I wanted to be. But you know what I mean, like at least there's something changing with that, you know. But we need to drill down to Métis stories more. We have to learn how to do that better.
Amazing. And what would be an example? Like, again, if the magic wand experiment, if you could see a story told, what would be like a story, or what would be something? Again, not that you're saying this would happen right away, right? It's always good to dream and have hopes and have ideas, but what would be?
I I think, one thing we are learning from some of the consultations that we've done in the community, because we've had advisory boards at Global. Now this predates my time there, but I've been able to read some of the notes from those exchanges. And so it's interesting to hear how many people in the community want to hear about positive stories. We unfortunately, the news is usually quite toxic and negative, but there are positive stories that can be told. And I think that's where we need to do a better job of celebrating culture through good news, and like, not just Indigenous cultures, but we heard this from all of these different groups. The South Asian community, um, many like the Chinese community in particular had some pretty scathing criticism of our coverage. So it's not just um, one group. It's We're not doing a good job, but in general, of for us as journalists, having that intercultural competency, but also being able to seek out those different stories. If I could have my magic wand, and what would I like to see? It would be more positive stories that celebrate and teach about the you know the Métis people, but I think all Indigenous peoples are really underrepresented in the media. Full stop. We need that to change.
Amazing. There's a makeup company that's Indigenous owned,
I know. Oh,
called
Cheekbone
Cheekbone
Beauty.
Beauty. She
Cheekbone
ran
Beauty.
a
I'm a huge fan.
Okay, she is I know your makeup area at Global is that you could stock it with Cheekbone Beauty. It'd be amazing. There's your
I should
uh,
I should reach out to them and see.
yeah, they totally
Yeah.
should. They did an amazing campaign with the folks at Sidley, the agency, called Write the Story, and
Yes.
it was a beautiful, moving poem slash piece. Like, it was almost, what's it called, spoken word piece, but it was
Yeah.
about writing the story about and it was all about news and how are Indigenous people represented in the news.
I think they are doing such an amazing job, at trying to shake up the narrative, you know? Like the lip gloss. Did you hear about the lip glosses that,
Yeah.
that they came out with? Which was I mean, they didn't actually
Sassy.
sell them,
Yeah. Yeah. Sassy.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
To really heighten awareness around the water
Yeah.
issues, on First Nations and reserves, and I was just like, I love that, and as a teacher of media relations and, communications and marketing, I was like, "Wow, that's so good." I actually have been meaning to reach out to them and say, "Guys, like, you're doing good stuff."
Oh,
Yep.
awesome. So those that are maybe listening now, they've got a good story. They've got a story to tell, or they've got something positive, and they're from the Métis community. Um, what's your tip to like pitching a story? Because I know there's one thing like the old days of put it on the wire, right? People would sit at the wire. The old days of J. Jonah Jameson smoking a cigar. What's
Yep.
the newsroom look like today to get a story pitched your way that actually works?
Well, I mean, you can of course do it a couple of different ways. You can just reach out to the tip line. There's an email address that we have on our website, and you can just send in your tips that way. But as we know, relationships always mean the most. So when I've actually had in the last few weeks, people reach out to me because they know I'm Indigenous, and they've said, "Oh, I have this story that I want out there, and here's who I am," and stuff like that. And so sometimes that's the better way to go is to send me a note personally, and I'm certainly open to that and want to hear those stories. I'm not going to be, unfortunately, and you know this too. I'm not going to be the end decision on that. It's you need to people do need to learn how to pitch something. "Here's my story. I think it's this, and, is there anything newsworthy that you see with this?" And to be able to take that, pitch and, send it to me, and then I can convince producers to allow me to do it. But, I only really get a small say in what I can do, as far as being able to take the resources and to be able to implement the story. But like for example, this story with the rec center, not rec center, sorry, the hatchery yesterday. They just reached out and said we're really really scared about the salmon. We just did a story to do with the Quikwitlam people. I think that was last week, and that was awesome. I was producing that story with Paul Johnson, so it was, to be able to see this come back to the First Nations people is so important. So that was a broader pitch, but sometimes there's smaller stories that do need to be told, but they need just reach out to someone like me. Um, Get to know reporters and no, we're not always doing hard news and investigative stuff. Sometimes it's just it's just the good stuff that we want to cover too, right?
Many of you, I've noticed in comic books, have alter egos. Clark Kent, Superman, Peter Parker, Spider-Man. It's interesting that superheroes are often depicted as reporters or working for a newspaper or news outlet in their day job.
Yeah,
What do you think? Why do you think that is?
I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Um,
you're special people.
I We're annoying. I like I'm sorry. We're super annoying. I I'm reading this excellent book called 100 Days of Rejection, and I highly recommend it. And I think the last name of the author is Jang. Anyway, it's such a great book because this gentleman reads a book talking about overcoming rejection, and then he challenges himself with all these different things, like 100 days of like trying all these things, like says to someone, "Hey, can I kick a soccer ball around in your backyard?" to some
Yeah.
guy.
Yeah. Plant a flower
This
in
other
someone's
per
yard,
Yeah,
sell
like,
cookies for the
okay.
Girl Guides.
Yeah,
This is hilarious.
yeah, it's great. And so in this, I was thinking about this book recently because I've been listening to bits of it, and I mean, this is what I do. Like, in that and being a teacher is not so much about the rejection, but being a journalist is definitely about the rejection and being able to overcome the "No, no, no, sorry, you can't talk to me. No," the what about the fact that we've got this journalism in general has a huge PR problem. People don't like journalists. People don't, they think we're doing fake news. And, that's disheartening to hear. And so when you've got that sort of problem with the PR around your profession, I don't necessarily think that what you're saying is true, that we're being depicted in a positive light, because I think most of the time we're not. Not that we need to be, but anyway, for the rejection side of things, what I was gonna get to here is just being able to, like, not say, not give up. And like I say, I still end up having a deadline, and, I was really frustrated on Tuesday because I was doing a story initially about, wait times and, how many parents in British Columbia are having problems with their little ones getting sick. And I was trying to access data through the different health authorities, around, hospital wait times and critical care, what numbers we're seeing, and I couldn't get that information. And I was just really frustrated. I was just I was trying so hard that day. And I'm new to this organization, so I don't want to be looked upon as not trying. And so in that sense, I think sometimes people don't understand that we're really, really trying to get the information. We're trying to convey solid, useful information for people so that they can take better care of their children. Um, and getting, thankfully, later in the day, and it was late in the day that, thankfully, the Minister of Health, Adrian Dix, was able to give us some information that we were able to build our story around. But it's, rejection is something that I don't like. I just wanna tell a story. I just
Yeah.
want people to give me the information, truthful information,
Yeah.
and check it out. But yeah, you just have to be dogged.
Yeah. That freedom of information. I waited 8 months for a black mark document for a story I was doing. Yeah. So and I had paid money for it. I think I paid, what was it, $10 for that piece of not very helpful documentation?
I know, or it's completely redacted and you're
Yeah,
trying to
yeah, yeah.
read it
Yeah.
going, "Okay, what?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
What?
And
What?"
the stuff I wanted was the stuff that was pulled out and then they used another reason why it couldn't be shared. But I was like, no, but that was the question I asked. Bizarre.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So it's, you know, it it it's hard to convey how much how hard we try.
Yeah.
We're trying so hard to get that information right. So yeah, when I've been yelled at, "Oh, you're fake news," it hurts. Oh, it hurts.
Hey, here's the thing. I didn't hear that until like the kind of Trumpism and then the truckers thing. But before that, I've never heard that term before. Like it was like seems to be like a Trump slash truckers thing. Do you hear
Yeah.
it outside of those worlds though?
Yeah, I
Do you think it
think I think you're right. I don't think it existed. I mean, I think there was distrust with the media. Again,
really?
I do think we have a problem
Huh.
if we're not,
Like Canadian media. We're talking about Canadian media. You think
well,
because there's way that
certainly.
you can say the US because I know the US there's like the Fox slash CNN. But in Canada, we've all seemed quite like they're critical of everyone. There's no real like liberal or conservative publication
I
that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I know that's it. It's interesting because I've got some really good friends who are, American journalists, and I think it's been very hard for them.
Yeah, and I think they're different than us in Canada because
Absolutely.
CBC, if anything, the CBC, even just CBC bringing all the new Indigenous writers and journalists has been cool to see. But I feel like everyone has been quite, you can't really put Global or CTV or anyone in a camp. It seems like.
Well, I think that there are certainly organizations, in Canada and primarily in the US though,
Yeah,
which they have a mandate.
yeah,
They have a bias,
yeah,
um, but I can safely say I'm I don't have an agenda.
hmm
I'm not right, I'm not left. I'm just trying to get the information. But I think when you have some of that noisy, biased media in the background that isn't really giving a full picture, then yeah, we've got people who can't trust what they're reading or hearing. In all fairness, even I go, "Whoa, why am I, why am I reading this? This is like junk food for the brain." You need to really put that critical thinking cap on and decide what you think is safe to consume. I just know for me personally, I've never done any reporting that I felt was really biased. Like I really do feel like I'm doing my best to get a full picture. Um, if someone's willing to talk to me. Um, but yeah, to come back to your point, I think we were seeing a degradation of that trust, prior to Trump. It just Trump really kept saying those words over and over again, and so now, yeah, it is surprising to me how much, both my partner and I have been yelled at, you know, and I felt more sorry for him because he's a
uh,
camera operator. So, he's gone to say a trucker protest and then he's being
yeah.
screamed at, fake news, you don't even cover us. And he'd be like, yeah, but I'm here.
I'm here now.
like,
I'm here now. So why don't you be
I-
nice? Like, get me
like
bring me
we're
a coffee
trying.
or yeah.
Yeah, we're
So
trying to
okay.
cover this.
So I'm gonna ask this. I'm so curious about your perspective. Like again, I don't believe it. Like, if not you, then who? Right? If
Yeah.
you're not doing this work of investigative journalism and of requesting those FOIs, being be in people's bonnet, a thorn in people's side, who else is gonna hold, call it governments and people and groups and call it bullies accountable? And putting them in the light of the court of public opinion. That's
And
my
that is,
question.
yeah, and that is our job. We are the fifth estate.
Come
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, we
Come
are.
on.
And if, for example, we're hearing of, say, for example, this week, the BC government said, "Okay, we're gonna put in a mask mandate."
Yeah.
We were actually panicking a bit, thinking, "Oh, great. Are people gonna wanna mask up again after we've, come back from that?" And, so it looked like might be tracking that story. And, like I said, it just ended up working out that we were able to hear that no, this mask mandate wasn't going to come in. And, it's not that I don't want to support that. And again, I'm really very much in the middle on a lot of issues because I need to be. I want to open up my mind to all the sides that are there. But it's as if, if you're not able, to have that opportunity to be open around that, you're you're really closing off
Mm,
so much, and I think that's true of us even as consumers of anything we take in for information, right? We need to be open, but yeah, it's an important job to hold, uh, officials' feet to the fire when we need to. Uh, you know, I I do try very hard to have balanced, reporting, like I say, and I hate I hate not having comment from a side that's
yeah.
important,
Yeah.
to speak to, and it's what we have to do. And I'm not going to make an apology for that because if there's something very wrong with the system, um, it's maybe a chance for change. Like I did a story on North Shore Rescue here a
Yeah.
few weeks back. They weren't allowed to use their night vision goggles to do long line hoisting. So um, there was this weird, regulation in the way that they couldn't get going on that. And okay, so why does that matter? Well, if you decide you're gonna take a hike somewhere on the North Shore, if you're stranded and it falls dark, you might be SOL. Excuse my language.
Yeah. Yeah.
Beat bad of luck. You're gonna be stuck there. But they've got this equipment, able to use it and, pull someone to safety. And they said, "We've been waiting. We've been in a holding pattern for, years trying to get the legislation to pass so that we can fly and do
Mm,
this and save people's lives and couldn't do it." We did a
mm,
story and that night, Mike Farnworth changed course. That's all it took.
yeah.
So those things are are important, for us to be able to do that sort of thing. That's not why I got into journalism, but I like the fact that you can make a difference.
And to quote Ben, or depending on the multiverse, might be Aunt May, those with great power have great responsibility. And Julie, it's amazing to see how you're using it.
Well, hopefully I'm doing it the right way,
No, I mean,
doing my
thank you.
best.
Thank you for coming on the show and sharing with us.
Welcome.
Where can people find you, message you, get a hold of you? Where can they see you?
Well, I'm on Twitter, uh, for who knows how long that's gonna
Yeah,
hold up
yeah,
for,
yeah.
right? That's an easy way to reach me. Um, I'm on Instagram, now private account, but, certainly any of that social media stuff. JulieNolin.ca is my personal website, so
Yeah.
that's an easy way to reach out to me. And at Global, I'm, Julie.Nolan@globalnews.ca. So, if you got a story to tell, I wanna hear about it.
And Julie, thank you for joining us. Speaker Series season of artists and creators. You being a content creator, teller of truth, teller of good stories, true stories for all of us here, BC and around the globe. So appreciate it.
Thank you again. Such an honor to be able to talk with you.
Thank you for joining us this episode of the Métis Speaker Series, and we'll see you next time on the show. This has been the Métis Speaker Series podcast. I'm Darian Kovacs. Thanks to the Métis Nation of British Columbia for making this possible, with funding provided by the Civil Forfeiture Office's Indigenous Healing Stream. You can listen to all of our episodes, learn more about the podcast, and sign up to the Métis Nation of BC newsletter to stay up to date on Métis news at métispodcastseries.ca. You can find out more about the music we're playing by Love Life by visiting SoundCloud at soundcloud.com/lovelifeofficial, LUVLYF official, and link in the show notes for your convenience. Follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast listening device. See you again soon. Mina Kawapa Mitten. Thank you, Marcy, for listening.